The first sign was the water. Marta noticed it on a Tuesday morning, the kind of gray Galician Tuesday that smells like wet stone and Atlantic salt, when she lifted the cistern lid to check why it had flushed itself twice in the night. She looked down into the tank and the water looked back at her, not literally. She told herself that immediately, told herself very firmly, water does not look. But there was a quality to it, a stillness that was somehow more still than stillness ought to be. And she replaced the lid and went to make coffee and did not mention it to her husband. Reuben was eating toast. He had toast every morning, same amount of butter, same angle of bite, same way of reading the sports pages without really reading them. She loved this about him, his absolute commitment to sameness. She had married sameness on purpose, after a childhood that had been everything but. She did not mention the water. That night, the flush happened again at 2 a.m., and then at 4, and Reuben finally hauled himself out of bed and stood in the bathroom doorway in his undershirt and slippers and said it was probably the valve. He said this with the authority of a man who had never in his life repaired a valve. She let him have it. He went back to sleep in 90 seconds. She lay on her back in the dark, listening. It did not flush again, but she could hear something, very faint, a sound below the frequency of hearing that she felt more in her teeth than her ears, a vibration like the hum of something ancient deciding whether to wake. She was not a dramatic person. She noted this about herself and moved on. By Thursday, the stains had appeared. They were not mold. She had seen mold. She had scrubbed mold. She knew its smell and texture and the particular defeated feeling of finding it again in the same corner you had just bleached. These were not that. They appeared on the inside of the bowl, which she had cleaned the day before, and they were arranged in a pattern that made no biological sense. Concentric, almost deliberate, like the growth rings of something that had been here a very long time, and was only now letting itself be seen. She photographed them with her phone. She looked at the photographs. She deleted the photographs. She did not delete the memory of how the stains had seemed, for just a half second when the bathroom light first hit them, to pulse. Reuben called a plumber on Friday. The plumber was a broad man named Anxo who smelled of pipe sealant and had the incurious eyes of someone who had seen everything a house could do. He spent 20 minutes with the toilet and came out and said the valve was fine. The cistern was fine. There was some discoloration in the bowl that he could not account for, but that was probably mineral. He charged them 40 euros and left. The stains were gone when Marta checked. She did not call Anxo back. Saturday night, Reuben was asleep by 10, and Marta was reading in the living room when she heard the bathroom door open. She had not opened it. She had not touched it. There was no draft. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that had been built in 1974, and its doors stuck in winter and swung in summer. But this was neither winter nor summer, and the door had been latched. She sat very still in the chair. The book was open in her lap. She had not turned a page in 10 minutes. The door had opened approximately 40 centimeters, enough to see the darkness of the bathroom inside, cut by the thin orange line of the nightlight they kept for when Reuben's mother visited. Nothing came out. She got up, crossed the hallway, pushed the door the rest of the way open, and turned on the light. The bathroom was empty. The toilet was in the corner where it had always been, white and ordinary. The wooden seat she'd bought from IKEA still slightly warped from moisture. The stains were back. They were larger. She looked at the toilet for a long time. It looked back. She went and woke Reuben. He did not believe her. He did not say he didn't believe her. He was not that kind of man, but she could see it in the careful way he kept his voice level. The way he said things like probably the wind, and maybe you were half asleep, and we should get the frame looked at. He stood in the bathroom in his undershirt and slippers and looked at the stains and said they were definitely mineral and that he'd buy some descaler tomorrow. He was asleep again in 4 minutes. She sat on the edge of the bed and watched his chest rise and fall and felt the vibration in her teeth begin again, low and patient, like something that had been waiting much longer than she had been alive. In the morning, she called her sister, who immediately suggested stress. She called Reuben's brother, who suggested a good cleaning. She called the building's property manager, who suggested she fill out a form. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and understood, with the particular clarity that comes after you have exhausted all reasonable options, that she was on her own. She went to the library. She was not sure what she was looking for. She pulled books on plumbing, on mycology, on paranormal phenomena, on Galician folklore, on water chemistry. She sat at a table and read for 3 hours and found nothing that matched the concentric stains, or the door that opened, or the vibration that lived below sound. A librarian stopped by her table once and looked at the stack of books and did not comment, which Marta found obscurely comforting. The professional courtesy of a person who had seen people need strange things and understood that need was real even when its object was hard to explain. She was replacing the books on their shelves when she found the pamphlet. It had been shelved between A Guide to Residential Drainage and a 1987 book on Galician traditional architecture, and it was printed on the kind of stock that suggested a very small budget and a very large conviction. The title was in 3 languages. The English portion read, "What Lives in Your Water? A Field Guide to Anomalous Domestic Phenomena." The author was listed as Dr. Prakash Venugopal, independent researcher, and there was a phone number with a Madrid prefix. Marta took a photograph of the pamphlet with her phone and put it back on the shelf. She called the number from the car. Dr. Venugopal answered on the second ring. His voice was precise and unhurried, with an accent she could not fully place, and when she described the stains and the vibration and the door that opened, he did not suggest stress or mineral deposits or a warped frame. He said, "What day did it begin?" She told him Tuesday. He was quiet for a moment. "Then you understand that I will need to come and see it. And you understand that what I tell you when I see it may be something you find difficult to accept." "I've already found several things difficult to accept this week," Marta said. "I'll manage." He arrived the next morning with a leather bag that looked older than the building and a device she did not recognize. A black metal rectangle about the size of a paperback book, covered in small dials, trailing a thin filament wire that ended in a sensor he placed along the base of the toilet's pedestal. Reuben was at work. Marta stood in the bathroom doorway and watched Venugopal work. He was a small man in his 60s with the careful movements of someone who had spent decades in rooms where carelessness had consequences. He did not speak for 10 minutes. He watched the dials. He made notes in a small book. He moved the sensor and watched the dials again. Then he sat back on his heels and looked up at her. "You need to understand," he said, "that what I am about to tell you is not metaphor. It is not interpretation. It is the result of 40 years of research across 6 continents, and it is something that institutions you trust, governments, universities, sanitation authorities, have known about for longer than you have been alive and have chosen, collectively, to say nothing about." "All right," Marta said. "Your toilet," Venugopal said, "is a node." He told her in the bathroom, then at the kitchen table with tea she made on autopilot while he talked, then for another 2 hours while the tea went cold. He told her about water. Not water as infrastructure, not water as chemistry, but water as medium, water as the oldest transmission network on the planet, older than language, older than biology as they understood it. He told her about what he called the architects, a word he used the way a physicist uses the word force, as a descriptor for something real that has no better name, something that had been present in the hydrosphere of this planet for a period he measured not in years, but in geological strata. He showed her photographs on a laptop, stains, in bathrooms, in Barcelona and Hyderabad and Sao Paulo, and a farmhouse in rural Brittany and an apartment in Seoul, all the same concentric pattern, all appearing within the same 30-day window in each case, all preceding something he would not name yet. "What is a node?" Marta asked. "A point of contact," Venugopal said. "They don't travel the way we travel. They move through water. They have always moved through water. Every pipe in every city is a road to them. They choose a terminal point, a fixed reservoir, a cistern, a well, and they begin the process of establishing presence. The stains are the byproduct. The vibration is the signal. The movement." He glanced toward the bathroom. "The movement is curiosity." Marta thought about the door opening 40 centimeters. She thought about what kind of thing might find a married couple in a 4th-floor apartment in Galicia interesting enough to look at. "What do they want?" she asked. Venugopal wrapped both hands around his cold cup of tea. He was quiet for long enough that she understood he had asked himself this question many times and found no answer that satisfied him. "To assess," he said finally. "They have been assessing for a very long time. What they are assessing us for, whether as a resource, a curiosity, an obstacle, or something we have no category for, I have been attempting to determine for 4 decades. What I know is that the assessment is not neutral, that nodes appear in clusters, that when a cluster reaches a certain density," he stopped. "How many bathrooms does this building have?" She counted. 32 apartments. Some had 2. He opened his laptop and showed her a map. The city. Red dots, dozens of them, clustered in the older neighborhoods where the pipes ran deeper and the water sat longer in the mains. Her building was near the center of the cluster. She looked at the map for a long time. Then she looked at Venugopal. "Who else knows about this?" she asked. "The relevant agencies were informed," he said, in a tone that made it very clear what the agencies had done with that information. "I have sent reports. I have sent photographs. I have sent the readings from this device and 12 others like it. I have spoken to 14 governments in 22 years. I have been offered psychiatric referrals in 6 languages. So no one, some individuals know. No institution has chosen to act." He said this without bitterness, which she found more frightening than bitterness would have been. The calculation, I believe, is that acknowledging the problem requires acknowledging the source, and acknowledging the source requires telling 8 billion people that something has been living in their water since before they were bipedal, and the conclusion reached every time is that this is information a population cannot bear. "Those people are underestimating populations," Marta said. Venugopal looked at her for a moment. Then he smiled, small and genuine and tired. "Yes," he said, "they always do." Ruben came home at 7. She sat him at the kitchen table and told him everything. He listened, which she had not been certain he would do. He looked at the photographs. He looked at Venugopal's device. He looked at Venugopal himself with the careful measuring expression he used when someone was trying to sell him something, and then he looked back at Marta and she saw him make the decision, not to believe, exactly, but to proceed as though belief were the more useful position. She had known she married the right person. She was glad to be reminded. "So what do we do?" Ruben said. "That," Venugopal said, "is where it becomes complicated." The readings had been climbing for 48 hours. The device, Venugopal called it a resonance gauge, and the way he said it suggested the name was inadequate for what it did, was registering fluctuations that corresponded, in his data from 6 other confirmed node sites, with the end of the assessment phase. He did not say what came after the assessment phase. He showed them the numbers instead. The numbers were large and moving in one direction. He had been monitoring 4 other nodes in the city simultaneously. 2 had gone dark overnight, which in his experience meant one of 2 things. He did not specify which 2 things. He said he needed access to the pipe junction in the basement. He needed 24 hours, and he needed them to understand that if his intervention worked, it would work quietly, and if it did not work, they would know immediately, and should be prepared to leave the building without taking anything they were not already holding. "What are you going to do?" Marta asked. "I am going to talk to it," Venugopal said. He explained, without embarrassment, that in 40 years he had developed a working theory of the architect's signal language. Not speech, nothing as sequential as speech, but a pattern of resonant frequencies that corresponded loosely to concepts. He had never been certain it worked in any meaningful direction. He had sent signals at 3 previous node sites, and in 2 of those cases the readings had stabilized. In the 3rd case, he had needed to leave quite quickly. He said this the way a person describes a bus they nearly caught. Marta and Ruben went to bed at midnight. Venugopal was in the bathroom with his device, and a second instrument she had not seen him unpack. A larger thing with a speaker cone aimed at the toilet's base, emitting sounds below the threshold of human hearing that she felt in her back teeth as she lay in the dark. Ruben held her hand. Neither of them slept at 3 a.m. The building's plumbing made a sound she had no reference for. Not a mechanical sound, not a burst pipe or a hammer in the mains, but something vast and resonant, as though the water in every pipe in the structure had aligned and spoken at once. The walls did not shake, the lights did not flicker. It was just the sound, immense and close and utterly alien, rising for 5 seconds and then dropping away into the kind of silence that feels like it is listening. Ruben's hand tightened on hers. She felt him breathe. They lay still. Nothing else happened. At 5 a.m., Venugopal knocked softly on the bedroom door and said they could sleep and that he would explain in the morning. He explained over breakfast. The readings had changed character after the sound. Not diminished, not spiked, changed. Become, in his reading of the patterns, interrogative. As though the signal he had sent had been received, processed, and a question had been returned. He had spent 2 hours formulating an answer, which was a sentence in the closest approximation of the architect's frequency language that he could manage, and which communicated, as best he could translate, something like aware, not hostile, occupied. Occupied, Reuben repeated. As in, this space is occupied by something that is aware of you, and is not hostile to you, and is here. Venugopal spread his hands. The vocabulary is extremely limited, and it responded. The reading stabilized. He paused, which is what they did at the second successful site. At the third site, the readings also stabilized, and then approximately 4 hours later, they did something quite different. Marta put down her coffee. So we don't know yet. We will know within 4 hours, Venugopal said. What I need you to understand is that if the readings do something other than remain stable, what is required is not panic, and not evacuation, and not calling the police, because none of those things will have any effect. What is required is something specific to you, to this apartment, to whoever lives here. Something the frequency language cannot carry. She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean that in the one case where I failed, Venugopal said, I believe I failed because I was alone. The signal I sent was technically accurate, but it was thin. One voice. In the cases where it worked, there were people present. Real people with weight and history and specific attachment to the place and to each other. I believe, this is hypothesis, I cannot prove it, that what the architects are measuring is not just biological presence. They have been here since before biology was complicated. What is novel to them, what they cannot model from their time in the water, is something more specific. Particular lives. The weight of someone who has been in a place long enough to love it. Reuben and Marta looked at each other. She thought about Reuben and his toast. His 40 euros for a plumber who found nothing. The way he had listened, really listened, even when she was telling him something that should have broken the comfortable machinery of how their life worked. She thought about the warped IKEA toilet seat that she had never gotten around to replacing and had stopped noticing 2 years ago, and how the fact of not noticing it was itself a kind of record, a sediment of ordinary days. She thought about the vibration in her teeth, the first night, and how she had noted it and moved on. The stubbornness of that. The sheer human habit of noting a terrifying thing and then making coffee. So what do we do, Reuben said, if the readings change? Venugopal looked at him for a moment. You stay. You stay in the apartment, in the rooms you live in, doing what you do, as specifically and as stubbornly as you can manage. He paused. It sounds thin. I am aware it sounds thin. But I have watched it work, and I have watched it fail when it wasn't present, and I don't have a better theory. At 7 a.m. the readings changed. Marta heard the device's pitch shift from the kitchen and looked at Venugopal and saw his face change too. A small controlled tightening, and she understood. Reuben was already standing. The vibration was back in her teeth, stronger now, and the bathroom door was opening again, wider this time, and the light in the bathroom seemed wrong. Not darker, not brighter, but wrong in a way that had nothing to do with photons, a quality of presence so dense it pressed against the air. Something was in the water. Something that had been in the water since before there were pipes to carry it, since before there were cities built around water, since before the species that built cities had figured out what water was. It was in the pipes of this building, and the mains below the street, and the aquifer below that, and it was looking at them through the cistern like a person looking through a keyhole. And it was deciding. Stay, Venugopal said very quietly. Stay in the apartment. Do what you do. Reuben walked to the kitchen counter. He got 2 slices of bread from the bag. He put them in the toaster. He got the butter from the fridge, and a knife from the drawer, and the sports pages from where they had been lying, folded on the counter since yesterday. And he sat at the table and unfolded them and waited for the toast. Marta sat across from him. She picked up her coffee cup, found it empty, got up and refilled it at the machine. The machine made its ordinary sound. The toaster clicked. The bathroom door was open 30 centimeters, 40. She could feel the pressure of whatever was in there like a hand pressed flat against her sternum, patient and vast and old beyond imagining. And she could hear Venugopal's device cycling through frequencies in a rising pattern. His voice low and steady underneath it, speaking in sounds that weren't language but were trying to be. Reuben's toast popped. He reached over and got it and began to butter it. He buttered it the same way he had buttered toast every morning of their marriage. Even strokes, all the way to the edges, a small economy of motion that she had catalogued without trying. The way you catalog things you have seen so many times, they have become part of the texture of being alive. He bit it at the same angle. He read the football results. He made a small sound at something he read, the same small sound, and turned the page. She thought about what Venugopal had said. The weight of someone who has been in a place long enough to love it. She reached across the table. She put her hand over Ruben's, the one not holding the toast. He looked up at her over the newspaper. The pressure in her chest did not ease, but it shifted, changed character. The way the readings had changed character at 3 a.m. became something more like attention than hostility, something that was registering, adding to its record, processing the data of two people at a table with coffee and toast and a 40-year-old device sending signals through the floor. All of it specific, all of it weighted, all of it stubbornly, unremarkably particular. "We are here," the toast said. "We have always been here. We were here before you found us." The vibration in her teeth climbed for 30 seconds and then dropped away clean, like a note finding its resolution. Venugopal exhaled. He came out of the bathroom and sat at the table and did not say anything for a long moment. His device was in his hands, screen facing up. The numbers were different now. They were low and steady, and they had the quality, she thought, of something that had reached a decision. "It withdrew?" Ruben asked. "No," Venugopal said. "It's still there. It will always be there, I think, in the water, in the pipes." He set the device down. "But the assessment has been logged, I think is the best word. You have been logged, as present, as known. Specifically here." Marta considered this. "That's it?" "That's rarely as small a thing as it sounds," Venugopal said. He looked tired in a way that suggested the tiredness went back a very long way. "In 40 years, in every case where the readings changed the way yours just changed, the nodes became stable. Not inert. They never become inert. The architects do not stop being in the water. The water does not stop being their medium, but stable, coexistent." He paused. "The two cases where I failed, the nodes escalated. In one case, there was significant structural damage. In the other, the family had already evacuated, and I was alone, as I told you, and there was nothing for the signal to reflect off." "You need the toast," Ruben said. Venugopal blinked at him. "The toast," Ruben said. "The ordinary, everyday, specific human stuff. That's the signal that actually matters. You've been sending it with the machine, but the machine can't carry it. Not really. It needs the actual." He gestured at the table, at the butter and the newspaper and the coffee cups and Marta's hand still over his. "It needs the actual people being actually people." Venugopal looked at him for a long moment. He opened his small notebook and wrote something. "I have been trying to build a better device for 20 years, he said. "I think perhaps I have been building the wrong thing." He left them his number and 3 pages of notes in handwriting so dense it was almost illegible. He said he would be in contact when he had processed the readings. He said there would likely be other sites in the city reaching the same point within the next weeks and months. He looked at Marta when he said this. She understood what the look meant. After he left, she and Ruben washed up the breakfast things together the way they always did. She washed, he dried, the radio playing the morning program from the local station that they had listened to for 7 years and never once paid full attention to. She handed him a cup. He dried it and put it away. Ordinary specific, thoroughly, stubbornly theirs. In the bathroom, very faintly, the cistern filled and sat still. The stains, when she checked later, had changed. Not gone, she had stopped expecting them to go. But the concentric pattern had rearranged itself into something she did not have a name for. Something that reminded her, absurdly, of a signature. As though whatever had been here had made a note for itself, visited, assessed, known. She took a photograph. She did not delete it. She called her sister. "False alarm," she said. "Mineral. Ruben's getting descaler." And she looked at the photograph on her phone, at the unmistakable deliberateness of the pattern. And she thought about Venugopal and his 40 years of reports that nobody read, and the quiet impossibility of carrying knowledge that institutions had decided was too large to be useful. And she thought about the moment of decision she had watched him make 40 years into his work. To keep going anyway. To keep sending signals into the dark even without certainty that anything received them. She thought about the toast. She put the phone away and went to start dinner. From below, from the deep mains and the aquifer beneath the city, and the vast slow medium through which something old beyond comprehension moved from place to place, and system to system, and pipe to pipe, and cistern to cistern, there was no sound, no vibration, no frequency in her teeth. The apartment was quiet the way a place is quiet that has been acknowledged, not empty, not abandoned, but known, which is a different kind of quiet entirely. Ruben came to find her in the kitchen. He stood in the doorway in his socks, the sports pages folded under his arm, the same angle of entry he had used 10,000 mornings, and he said, "Soup?" "Soup," she said. He filled the pot. The tap ran. The water was clear. They stood in the kitchen, and the city sat on top of its pipes and its mains and its deep, cold aquifer, and far below, in the water, in the old medium through which the architects had always moved, something registered the coordinates of this apartment and the weight of these people and added them to a record that was older than civilization and kept moving on, because there were 8 billion more to find, and the finding had only just begun. But here, in this kitchen, in this particular building, in this particular city on the gray Atlantic coast, the water ran clear, and the pot filled, and Reuben found the ladle, and Marta found the onions, and they cooked dinner the way they had cooked it every night for 11 years, which is to say imperfectly and together, and whatever was in the water knew that, and knew it specifically, and had decided that knowing was enough. For now. The stains would be there in the morning. She had already made peace with that. She had already decided to leave them. They were not, after all, a threat. They were a signature. Proof of contact. Evidence that something ancient had looked at the ordinary and specific fact of two people living their life, and had found it, if not comprehensible, then at least undeniable. Registered, logged, known, which was, she thought, all any of them were really asking for.